Welcome to Can I Speak to Your Product Manager, the nitty-gritty with your favorite PMs. I'm Kyle Kolich, Vice President of Product at Zora.
And I'm Lucas Weber, Director of Product Management at Zora. On today's episode, we have Micah Peterson, VP of Product Management at ProcedureFlow. And we're going to start off the show by talking about Micah's recent Never Have I Ever, as well as his best tips and insights for being a successful PM in the ever-evolving business landscape. Thanks for joining us today, Micah. So outside of work and your product management role, you probably get to do things that maybe you initially thought were impossible, and no matter what, they magically get done. So we wanted to get that story from you, those experiences on the outside of your role, and kind of bring them in and then take a look at them from a PM perspective. This will give us an ability to learn a little bit more about you, learn about the PM process, and of course about the experience you had.
Never have I ever.
Never have I ever.
Never have I ever.
So, Micah, tell us a bit about your Never Have I Ever.
Well, I had to think a little long and hard about this because I live a pretty structured, boring life. My wife and I have 7 kids, and we have 45 acres on a lake just 20 minutes outside of our city here in St. John, New Brunswick in Canada on the East Coast. And so I don't skydive or, I do have a 4-wheeler, but it's pretty normal for around here. But I did think about how during COVID, there was food insecurity that was happening. And our premier actually told us that we're not producing enough food. Like, we import more food than we produce locally. So there was kind of an encouragement there for people to experiment and maybe get into farming a little bit. So we have the land, and I had watched my brother do some experiments with doing some egg-laying chickens and also meat king chickens. And that's about a 2-month turnaround from chick to having meat in your freezer. So I decided I'd been doing egg-laying chickens for a little while, and I decided to try doing meat kings, which was kind of scary because everything I'd heard about it was that they're pretty messy. Like they grow 4 times as fast, they eat 4 times as much, and they poop 4 times as much as well. And so there's kind of like this, you have this 2-month window right in the middle of your summer where it's like, what have I signed up for? And so anyway, we did it, and it was really great. We do it still. We've gone from, originally we did about 30, 40 chickens the first summer, and now we do 180 per summer. And so we've sold 120 birds so far, and we're going to do the last 60 in the first week of September.
I'm assuming that you're purchasing chicklets. You bring them home, you let them run around your 45 acres. They're really well behaved. They just stay in where the food is, and they just get bigger, and then 2 months later, profit, right? Is that pretty much how it goes?
Exactly, Lucas. No, not quite like that. It's quite a technical process. Do you want me to share with you some of the details?
I would love it. Yeah, maybe just pick 1 or 2 things that,
Sure.
Never would I have ever imagined that that's what it would take.
Yeah, so I think if you think about it in 2 life segments, they spend about the first 3 weeks inside a shelter. And so essentially you've taken their mother away from them. Like, they don't have a mother because they're sort of manufactured, but they don't have a mom. They need 37.5 degrees Celsius in the first 3 days coming out of the egg. And if you don't provide that, they die. And that includes when they're running around and when they're sleeping, and all the complications of where do they fall asleep and how many of them are clustered together when they sleep and all that kind of stuff. And so your first project is really how to set up a shelter that's protected from rain and predators and stuff, and has a heat lamp and a food and water source, and they don't die. So you're just trying to keep them, you're trying to be the mother hen essentially for 3 weeks. The second segment is you get them outside, they're in the grass, they're eating grass and bugs and things like that, and then you're supplementing their diet with some grain. Still, you got to get a lot of water to them now, and now they're really pooping a lot, and you've got to move them around, make sure that they're getting where they need to go, and you don't leave them in one spot. Still protecting them from predators, and trying to do that in a way that it's not eating up more than because I'm doing this full time. So it's like I have to be able to do this in 20 minutes in the morning. And if I can't do that, then it's not going to happen. And so being
Yeah.
as efficient as possible with moving food and water and all these birds around. So
Or what's like the number one predator? Is it?
I would say that everything wants to eat chicken so much that even herbivores would probably try a chicken. Like I wouldn't put it past a squirrel or a gopher or something to take a bite at them. It's incredible. And we got our first batch of chickens done, and then we kept researching, and then we found this unit, and we built that. And so there is this kind of like MVP. It's like, what can you do to get some chickens going without having to stop and build everything before you get started.
Yeah, and do it right the first time, right? So you are iterating here. You're trying different things. I'm sure there's a lot of learnings in the process. It sounds like now you've been doing it for a couple of years. You've learned a ton by doing this. It sounds like you've iterated and improved the process. And I would say probably now you're going to higher counts of chicks, which means that your product is scaling to some extent, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you're much more. So, I mean, talk about maybe jumping into the deep water initially, but I think, how do you feel about it now? Like, obviously, you've scaled it up. Do you feel like at this juncture you've got it to 90% efficient? Is there some other things that you could think you could improve on?
Yeah.
Or?
It's so good now that I was actually able to hire my nephew this summer. And so I've been able to, actually delegate. And if we just only did 180 birds, we'd be fine from here on out. And the process is actually really smooth. Anyway, it's a very interesting, place to be.
Yeah. I mean, this is typical of scaling a business too, right? I remember way back when I was part of startups, right? There's the big deal to get to like your first million, right? Then the next to 3 million, then to like 10 million, right? And like of revenue, annual revenue, right? And so each one of those had a certain like commitment point and a lot of effort to break through that particular line. And it sounds like you're at this level at 180 where, okay, you're at one stage of growth of your chick company, right? And to go to the next level now requires, maybe to some extent small things, right? Like 4 more houses, but at the same time, now you're also looking at other issues that come with that absolutely take your operation somewhere else.
It's interesting. There was a point in ProcedureFlow's development where, we had happy customers, we're doing all the right things. We've always been top notch on securities first, reliability, all that stuff. But then as we were selling to much larger customers, they needed SOC 2, they needed third-party validation that your practices were correct, and work with penetration testing and all that kind of stuff. So it's like that government coming in at the 300 bird mark or whatever, and it's you have to do due diligence. So we had to kind of, while the bus is moving forward, you have to all of a sudden apply an entire SOC 2 program in there. And so there's a lot of parallels, in terms of these threshold moments where if you don't do this, you're just never going to be able to get to the scale that you want to get to. And then as a product manager, figuring out, man, no existing customer that we have is going to care about SOC 2, really, like they've already taken the risk. So it's like, those are hard. It's hard to like work on features or work on things that don't immediately benefit the user, but you have to do it to exist as a company. And that comes up a lot more often than you would like it to, and where you're just working on core things to grow into the enterprise, and the users are like, "Are you guys doing anything?" It's just like, nah.
And I like the journey you kind of went through. I like that when you started off with just get a few chickens live, and then you had to keep like iterating and figuring out what worked and how to. I'm sure you had some failure rates of some of those initial chicks, but then finally you got a better understanding, and you start getting more innovation of what can make it easier with, like you said, that triangle house that kind of stopped the predator. So it's a constant innovation, which I think is a good way to segment into our segment 2, which is innovation, therapy, and other wild tales. So this is the kind of getting a little more nitty gritty of the day-to-day stuff of the product manager and what's happening in the world of PM. So I guess what's top of mind for you right now?
Yeah, so We're play on knowledge management currently. It's evolving. The space is evolving. But the big thing that we did was take what's normally written text paragraph information in standard operating procedure documents. It used to be like not that long ago printed binders, for like call centers or operational centers, and that got put into often SharePoint or like knowledge bases, but it's still this text heavy format. We turn it into small hyperlink flowcharts, but to put that in better context, it's basically the operationalization of flowcharts, which hasn't really been done till now, until us. And so we actually have a driving first and navigating first experience versus an editing first experience like you would have in Visio or Lucidchart. And so what people are doing is they're going in and actually driving through these flows to do their job in real time. And that's fairly novel. Like nobody's really doing that. And so it's kind of half of the problem is consumability of complex process information, and the other half of it is ownership and collaborating with an entire operational team, different departments like training, quality assurance, the operational team leads, the people that actually do the job themselves, and the managers and stuff, and allowing them to have a say, so that when processes are changing, they can update them, make suggestions, and the interplay of all of that. And so that's kind of the space that we play in. And so the core values for us that we've established from the beginning and just tried to stay true to all the way along is making it simple, because what we're doing is taking complexity that's in a written format and like parsing it out so that it's like really simple, really easy to follow. And that translates through to our product and the way we design the features and the building, the capturing of the information, to the using it, to the reporting. The second thing is democratization of knowledge, or I like to call it ownership. So it's basically like, are the people using it, are they able to provide feedback and can they own it and be a part of it versus having process pushed down on them? And then the last thing is just being customer obsessed, which I think every startup and every PM would strive to do, is, serve their customers as best as possible. And so we may make a decision that doesn't seem right for one customer, but it's actually 99% correct for the rest of the customers. And so customer obsessed doesn't always mean just dance around and build whatever people want. It means you make hard decisions that affect everybody and move everyone towards a vision that you have for keeping things simple and democratization of knowledge.
Let's maybe go through each one in turn. So the simplicity aspect makes sense, because we're talking about, as I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somebody in a call center going through a certain flow, right? They have somebody live online, and they're calling in for a particular issue, or maybe they just need to be stepped through a particular sales process, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea is it is very much real time. It can't be 10 pages of text that the person needs to read, right? Nobody's going to, one, read that, two, listen to it on the phone. So it's got to be quick. You've also got to be able to kind of cover the different branch points, right? If the person on the phone says one thing or the other, so
That's
that
right.
the person knows where to go next, and obviously those things have to make sense. So there's lots of branching there, and keeping that short and simple and accurate is critical to success, and having that person be able to solve the problem, and I think have a confidence. I mean, I would imagine that somebody like that is taking hundreds of calls per day, right? And so it just needs to work. So I think that's the simplicity aspect of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of the confidence, one example would be like a health insurance company, and there's a special authorization for a drug, and the person's waiting for approval, and they keep calling in, and they're like, am I approved yet? Am I approved yet? And the agent doesn't have the confidence with the paper documentation to say, you need to wait 14 more days, or, you haven't waited the appropriate amount of time, we're working on it, or whatever. So if you have just black and white flows that you can go through, that's like, check this in the system, has it been this long? No, then you need to tell them they need to wait this many more days. The ability to deliver confidence in your answer because it's black and white and it's logical, versus reading through paragraphs of text and not really feeling confident, and then putting them on hold, calling internally, annoying the special auth group, and all the problems that flow from that.
And you make a good process for not only the end user that's going through it, but the one who's actually taking the call, and I'm sure they don't really like to be, dragging things out and, getting harassed.
No.
They want to feel confident that they can, okay, this is what's going on, this is where your status is. The customer feels happy. They're not screaming at them. It almost creates like
That's
a
right.
dual, supporting framework that everyone kind of has a good experience from it.
That's right. You'd be surprised how many businesses just sort of leave that ambiguity at the point where it's most important, where you're actually talking to the customer. That's where the most ambiguity lies. And they think that they have their policies tight at a high level, but when you get down into the standard operating procedures, they leave everything quite loose. And so it's like whatever you memorized in training, or whatever your team lead said last Thursday, or like it's very, very loose. And so there's a lot of problems that stem from that. And I did a video recently on LinkedIn just talking about how I quit my childhood bank, and just made this point that, like, at the most critical points of a customer's journey with your company is where we often fail them the hardest. And it is exactly at this level of the company hasn't explicitly said what decision that they want to be communicated to the customer. They're just unwilling to take that last mile and put the decision diamond in that says, you know what I mean? Make them wait 14 days. You have to make a decision.
Yeah, sometimes clarity around that just really helps get everything solidified. I think this is where you're saying that your product focuses on getting that feedback from the actual folks that go through the flow, right, from management in terms of reporting and being able to understand what's working, what's not. Is that kind of what you guys focus on there, and make that easy for folks to give feedback?
Yeah, our heart from day one has been, we believe in subject matter experts. So there are these people that stick around, and they have the best quality and average handle time and the best customer satisfaction scores. And so we take those people and we ask them explicitly, sort of, some of our customers term it like prove you're a pro, and they'll have them go in and either find breakage points in the flows and correct them, or put in their best practices. I say it like this: I ask the question further up here, and I get better results because I don't have to do all these things if I know this piece of information here. And so you're really enticing or encouraging, these best people to put in the way that they do it. What else could a business ask for? Do you know what I mean? Like, to get from your best people what they're doing. Have it validated. There's an approval process and a publishing model there, but have it validated with the right people, the legal team, whatever. But that those go in and actually get put into practice. And then the pride that comes with having your name in the change history, the audit trail with the side-by-side comparison of what the process was before, what it is after, who put the suggestion in, who approved it when. That all comes together to create the ownership without any gamification. We had gamification really early on our roadmap, and we thought, do we need to do leaderboards and like all this stuff? And maybe there's still something there, but we found a lot of that stuff was cheesy in practice, or it can be dangerous with a knowledge base to game. Like, people will game the system and corrupt the knowledge base. But if you just actually have ownership and put people's names on things, there's a pride there that and people will then participate in it. And you have to juxtapose this against paragraphs of text in a knowledge base, emails going out with big paragraphs, and like nobody cares, and nobody's reading it, and nobody's using it. So why would you bother correcting it if it's not being actioned on a day-to-day basis? And so there's a lot of apathy, a lot of tiredness around a traditional text-based knowledge base, where ours is actually consumable. People are using it to their job. We see it. We see people participating and clicking. Then you participate with the ownership. It's very vibrant. It's really fun. And one of my joys to this day, we just had a team update we call In the Know, for our monthly team updates. And one of our Customer for Life people showed one of our home screens for our customers. And they create these like 1995 intranet like home pages. You remember the bulletin board background? And you would put like the digital sticky notes and stuff. And it's like, it's Colin's birthday, there's cake in the kitchen. In October, we're going to do this Halloween thing, whatever. And you see just the fun and the vibrancy of that, those quick edits and updates and the ownership of the team. It results in, there's like GIFs and like, all kinds of really fun meme stuff going on in there. And so it's fun to see, people knowledge repository come to life when you make it consumable and democratize it.
Yeah, you make it very organic too, because you kind of get that
That's right.
natural feel from your SMEs, and you get them seeing their feedback actually being impacted. I think probably one of the problems with some of the feedback loops is that you say something and it feels like you just throw it down a black hole, dark tunnel, never happens. But when you start saying something and you see it evolve the way the product works, I mean, they kind of empower the user, like, oh wow, I made a difference. I'm actually making my life easier because it's something I wanted the product to do, and now it's happening, and I can actually see it making my life easier, making other people easier. It kind of gives them that empowerment approach for it. When you said customer obsessed, and I thought you were going to go a little different direction, but what are some of like the hard no's you had to say to a customer where it didn't feel, kind of didn't feel like customer obsessed, but it actually ended up being better for the customer because you said the way you directed?
Yeah, I have a couple of great examples on that, Kyle. My favorite one, which we still get asked to this day, is can you build more features around printing? We built the standard operating procedure tool that's in the cloud. It's always up to date. People are making process changes all the time. It has reporting capability. We built all of this collaboration into it to make it operational. And like, what the heck are you trying to do? Trying to print it, you know what I mean? And there's legitimate use cases. So sometimes people actually just want to do a screen grab so they can put it into like a PowerPoint, or there's vehicles for that kind of stuff. And so as a product manager, you have to calm down, like go into every call just like with an open mind and be like, what is it exactly that you're trying to do? And then I see. And then sometimes you can there's workarounds, like there's a Chrome extension that will take a screenshot of the whole flow and what have you. But on the whole, the philosophy of printing, when you really boil it down a lot of times, it's like this is counter to what is good for your business. And as a product manager, when I have the choice between building new reporting functionality or something that helps the mappers make the maps faster, or like we might use ChatGPT, for instance, to help explore making maps, right? Like take this paragraph SOP and turn it into a flowchart. I'm going to invest in that stuff all day, and I'm going to just ignore printing for as long as possible. And so it's like, does it align with our strategic vision for the product? Is it helpful to all of our customers? Or is it really just, just people sort of living in the past, and are you going to cater to that, or are you going to look to the future? Another long ago example was we had, at a certain point, cloud got traction, and now it's like, oh, it's a no-brainer, right? But, if you remember back, people had a lot of concerns about security, and we had to build an offline backup feature, which is one of the ways that we overcame having to do on-prem. But I had a very thorough conversation with their engineering team, and because I came from a company that had sold CDs and version 5.6.1 and patches and tech support and quality assurance, all that, servers in a room with all the different versions, and every time you made a feature change, did it work across all the different versions and everything. And he goes to me, Michael, we're not doing that. And I was like, why? And he's like, we're not doing it. And he said, if we do that, here's the cost. We're going to have more quality assurance people, or a whole quality assurance program, all the servers and everything to support that. We're going to have lots more customer support and I knew this from experience. That was my first job out of university. And it's like, you're going to have to support all these patching. So now my development team is going to be building patches for version 3.8, and we're on 6 now. All of this stuff, right? He's like, we're going to have one version, and every time we make a change, everybody's going to get that change. And so he, converted me over to the cost, of doing on-prem versus cloud. And sure enough, we kept getting requests. Can you have an on-prem version? We won't buy it unless it's on-prem. And we were just unmovable on that because we knew long-term, everybody's going to the cloud. This is best. And so that was, we probably lost some deals. We probably, made it harder for ourselves early on, but long-term, it was the right thing to do. And it's like, no, you make the decision on their behalf. Think it through and simplify.
It may be unpopular choices, but they do win out in the long term. But you do have to kind of stay the course with the decision you made. Now, on the topic of innovation, you did mention ChatGPT being used to do the flows. I'm going to throw something controversial out there. Are you finding anybody or your product considering actually using ChatGPT to roll through the flows, to be actually the folks that execute the flow against the caller?
there's part of the way you're asking that question is maybe new thinking for me, but of the other half of it that is stuff that we are thinking about. We are making inroads in what we call power shapes, the ability to look at what we have mapped, what the customer has mapped, and say, look, there's all these steps, and they click on these buttons in this system, they go to this tab field, fill this thing out, get some information, come back, a decision gets made, then do something else with it. And so there's a lot of interplay between probing questions, gathering information, tackling systems, clicking around. And so we've made inroads. This was before ChatGPT, but we're on this journey towards providing simple automations where we make 4 subflow clicks with 50 steps turn into 1 click, and so a seamless integration between the systems that they use on a day-to-day basis with the staying in the flow of the process, and with the goal of just taking away mundane, repetitive things that they have to do. And so you don't need ChatGPT for that. You have this as-is map that you've created. People are executing it, and it's really about just logically and sensibly, maybe using the reporting data, but maybe just using their own common sense, saying, this is ridiculous, we need to collapse this in. And we've actually had customers call us and say, we mapped everything out, we can't believe how crazy our process steps are, we want to simplify, can you help us do that? And so that's kind of where the journey started. So automation is partly that, it's partly using common sense to look at your as-is process and say what could be simplified or automated. So there is that kind of efficiency gain that comes and happens. But in order to take another leap in AI, looking at what you have as your as-is flows, you do need metadata about what the arrows mean and what does the text inside of a shape mean and what do they mean to each other in relationship in the close proximity, but also as you go deeper, how are things deeper connected to the things above. And so you're going to, in the near term, you're going to see some excitement around the word guessing game that ChatGPT is with LLM and what can you do with it. And then you're going to see this secondary thing where there's some disappointment that sets in and people go, what is our information sitting in? How is it connected? How is it related? What do those relationships mean? And then you can do very sophisticated levels of automation and stuff.
Micah, I'm going to switch us to our last segment, which is PM Power Moves.
Powering up.
Power move.
So we're going to shift gears a bit and just dive into something very tactical or things that you're working with. Is there a story that you can share with us here from your experience where you had to go tactical and solve something? Maybe, bring in a new process, bring in a new tool to really solve some quandary that you guys were facing within your company.
I started out on the journey, obviously just using your gut, and you don't have a lot of customers and you're feeling your way through, and you're making what you think are pretty smart decisions early on to establish the product and meet the need of the customers. But very quickly you evolve into, you have multiple customers and they start all asking for different things or sometimes the same thing. And so I built out an Excel sheet really early on, and it was pretty simple. I had on the front of it, it was effort, how long is this going to take to build, and getting a sense of that with engineering, because that influences really everything else. Yep. What is the feature? What is the value to market 1, market 2, market 3? So it could be, for us, it was small call centers, medium call centers, large call centers, and then a more general enterprise use case that doesn't involve the call center at all. And so I have those all side by side because I really want to see if we build this feature, they love it, but these other groups don't care about it, or does everybody care about it? And that's a strong signal, right? Is there some kind of a blocker for an industry that we're trying to go after, a market segment that we're trying to go after? Is there, if we build this feature, does it unblock something that's like absolutely critical? An example is offline backup. We do have 24/7 call centers, and if we don't do an on-prem version for them, how are they going to use it if we have to do a database maintenance or something? And so that ended up being something really critical that we had to do, and only call centers cared about it. Other groups didn't care about it. And so those are some of the difficult decisions you have to make. And then if we build this feature, does it unblock something as a new market? Does it open up a new opportunity, new monies, and so can we, kill, or can we, I have a friend that instead of saying kill multiple birds with one stone, he says, can we feed multiple birds with one scone. So that Excel sheet helped for a long time. Like, it helped up to a certain number of markets and a certain number of customers. But then as the team started to grow, we started having a lot more influences. There's channel and partner integrations. And so you can ignore those for a certain amount of time, or maybe you shouldn't. Part of your strategy is, how do we get other people to sell our software? And if we have this integration, if we're in this marketplace, and so you start prioritizing features based on unlocking channels really quickly. And that's like a whole new paradigm, right? Like, you got to bring into your view. There is the expansion into the enterprise and how much of a priority. You have the Paul Graham YC, build for the niche, and then expand. A lot of, like, few people love you versus a lot of people are ho-hum about you. And so you're trying to do this niche thing, but then you've got your eye to the future and saying, if we build this, it opens up more enterprise expansion. You have to think about your internal customers, so the admin group who's doing the billing, and the customer service group that wants to know if somebody's about to churn, what signals can they get out of the software. So then you're into API and all that kind of stuff. And the engineering team might want to take some saw sharpening time, to upgrade their tooling or libraries. And so it's like that, you're like, shoot, that's going to take time. And so as you expand your horizon on all the inputs that are coming at product management, of which there's a ton, I use Product Board now, and that gives me the ability to add weights and scores. It's stuff that you sort of internally know in your gut because you're talking to customers and all of that, but you have to be able to communicate it back out. And then at a certain point, there's a sanity check where you're like, am I plugged in enough? Like, am I seeing all the email requests and our implementation team's requests as they talk to new customers? And so it gives you a sanity check to say, am I factoring everything in? And then being able to filter it across different markets that you're trying to open up. It's a big change to go from an Excel sheet to like something like Product Board, and it takes time to invest and build it out in a way that you want to represent it, and then to bring everybody onto it in terms of communication and feature management.
And I think I like that Product Board being a very good visual too, because you can see that, you can help kind of bring other people aboard, and part of being PM is being able to get like consensus, get people excited about it, get people to start,
right.
What do we prioritize? Which leads us to our last segment of the day, which is ship it or skip it.
What do you want to do?
Let's do it.
No.
No. Maybe. Yes.
So we're going to use the Product Board, but we're going to do more rapid. You can't do the weighing and the scaling. You're going to have to kind of take it quickly. But the idea is, will you ship it? Will you bring this product to market? You be the PM you're ready for it, or would you just skip it and bury it and never touch it? So the first one, taking from your knowledge of the chickens and that industry, what about lab-grown chicken meat? Ship it or skip it?
Skip it.
Skip it. Go back to the ones with heads. Very good. All right. I'm going to go with the fact that you have a large family with 7 children, and so the next 2 are going to be geared to the family people. Dispose of clothes. Disposal clothes for children. Why wash your clothes when you can throw them away, and it's also water soluble, to good for the environment? Ship it or skip it?
100%.
Really? Okay.
I do. Oh yeah. I mean, if it's cost effective, we go through a lot of clothing. Well, you go to Walmart or something and you buy this really nice T-shirt for your kid. 5 days, that thing is just toast. Good. And you see they're out by the trampoline, they just rip their stuff out there, and it's on the ground, and I would do that in a heartbeat. Yeah.
The only problem is when it rains, I think the clothes start to break down. It's the only drawback.
Well, there's some innovation there, Kyle. We'll let you work on that.
Now, I also have 2 kids. I've noticed that getting them to learn to crawl. What about the baby mop? Take advantage of their growth of crawling and cleaning your floors at the same time. Baby mop. Ship it or skip it?
So the clothing is like a mop, and they just crawl around.
You put the outfit on the baby, and it has like a mop-like product, and as they walk or as they crawl and rub their bodies, they're shining your floor.
This might be controversial, but I would say skip it. Having had 7 kids and knowing what's on our floor, it seems like a good idea, but it's pretty gross. I think in the end game, and I think it would happen pretty fast. It would be something that you might get in trouble with the government might be taking your kids or something. So
Got it. Makes sense. I'm okay with that. I'm okay
Maybe
with that.
the disposable clothes already work as a mop, so you're kind of there.
There you
and
go.
Nobody
Could be
gets to know.
multiple. Yeah, there's something
Hey.
there. Something there.
There's an idea
and
for
I
a
did watch.
listener.
I did watch your video on the bank situation. I had actually a very similar experience.
Sure.
But would you ship or skip it? Banks sending birthday cards back to their customers.
Ship it, of course. I missed.
I figured you
missed
would.
the
I
old.
figured that was a layup. Bring back
I was
the
like-
personalized touch of the bank.
When I made the video, I was like, "Does anybody even know who Garfield is?" But I mean, he's made a few reboots. But yeah, Garfield Notice cards, 100%.
Good.
Very good, very good. All right, we talked about simplicity and not adding too many features. So I'm going to throw this out there. This is probably not very controversial, but you know, in your product, would you add more pop-ups? They're fun, you know. They're alerts. They're out there. You've got to interact with them. What could go wrong? We could use more of them, right?
I would say skip it. We built some pop-ups into our software, and it's on the line in terms of some people love it, but the reason I hate it as a product manager is because people hide information, and you don't know that it's there until you click on the pop-up, and so anytime you're hiding information, it becomes quite problematic from a consumption perspective. So to this day, I'm just like, did we make the right choice there? And there was times where we thought about actually taking functionality out, which is very daunting. If there's a caution for any PMs out there, it's be really careful with what you put in your product, because once you put it in, it's really hard to take it out. And
Good point.
make sure that you're not going to regret the decision that you make.
Yeah. Easy to ship, hard to back out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good. All right, Mike, I think that's all we have for the Ship It or Skip It. We wanted to thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing if you've made that step to 300 chicks, or are you staying with a comfortable 180?
We're actually switching to pigs next year, so.
Boy.
Well, then we'll definitely want to find out how that goes for you.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you joining us today. Great conversation.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
I thought that was a great conversation. I like that process where he's talking to a customer, and that's when most of these other processes break down. But that's where like the rubber hits the road, and when they find out what's the best way for that agent to navigate that relationship is key. And if you forget that, everything becomes hard, and the agent's upset, and the caller is upset, and so that how he focused on his product on that interaction really helped drive his successful use of his product. I also like the fact that he kind of leveraged the SMEs, that they're there, kind of a community of users to kind of help improve the product, get their feedback, quickly realize what's going on. I thought that's always nice to have. Sometimes you get feedback from customers, it just kind of falls out, so it's good to get that reinforcement of that. And I like the saying no. I think that was always a tough one, because when he said customer obsessed and he says, "But I got to say no," was his first thing. I was like, really? That's the first thing you're gonna say? But it did make sense. Like the story about the print. It's like I know they want print. It probably will give them like some happiness, but if I focus on that, I don't focus on the future. I don't focus on some bigger initiatives, the reporting things, some of the things I could really improve the product, improve that customer, and they'll probably forget about print in a few years. So saying no to that, also restrict some of that and say no, so you can give that best experience and flow for that customer, which I think was great. What do you think, Lucas?
Yeah. No, I agree. Actually, there's a couple of principles that I think I find every day. One of which is, again, just going back to the shapes and colors, right? These are not critical things that will add value to a business, and yet frequently, if there's confusion or anything like that, those are the things that people focus on, right? I mean, how many times have I fought over formatting of a document or whatever it is? Just like literally, is that the value of that we're working on here? No. So I think by standardizing it and removing that out of the conversation, it actually forces customers to really focus on the flow and the procedure and the business that they need to do. So I think that's always great. And then the other part is, I do find that there's a lot of things that are easy to do from an engineering coding perspective in software. And then it really behooves us to ask whether it is the right thing even if it's easy, right? Because it could be a distraction. So I like that prioritization. The other thing that I really liked is how he was focusing his prioritization of requests already by market, by effort, et cetera. It's pretty standard stuff. But then, as additional dimensions to doing decisions came in, I, in my mind, saw that you could have various perspectives on those dimensions, right? So if you look at all the different markets, you could put in the weights. And then if somebody's saying, look, you're not focusing on my market enough, let's just say that it's a particular manager for that market, right? You could then say, okay, but well, here's how I look at all the markets. Is your market more important than others, right? And it's an interesting cut through those weights to say, look, can we all align that the markets are about yay important, maybe by revenue or potential or whatever it is, right? And so people can then kind of agree that that's right. Obviously, exceptions happen, but there's a baseline for that. And what I really liked is that scoring could be rationalized, because you could look at the different dimensions, show people a particular perspective, or cut across a dimension, right? And say, look, don't you agree that we should look at markets this way? Don't you think that we should look at channels in a particular way, right? And that gives you a baseline. Then you can have a subsequent discussion. I think we've had somebody else come on and talk about it, like, okay, but then there's, in a particular quarter, you may want to focus on certain things like technical debt more than other things, right? Depending on how things go. So it's another great tool in the PM tool set to really decide priorities. So love that conversation. That's what I got of it.
Yeah, it's like that, always that manageable ball. It's like that lump of clay. You get a different perspective of how you adjust it. At the end of the day, it's always kind of evolving, isn't it? I mean, even with the other prioritization framework, you're right, quarter inputs or customer demand or something kind of molds it a different way as well. But having that framework is a good starting point.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you can make it visible and have people align to it and have visibility. I think it really reduces a lot of noise, aligns everybody in the organization around it. And I feel that people know what's going on too, are in the know and understand how the decisions were made. Well, this wraps up our episode with Micah Peterson. And be sure to hit the subscribe button and come join us for our next episode. Thank you so much for joining us.